Here's the news. It's not actually about the property. It's a little bit about the property.
If I was going to put a percentage on it, I'd say it's 20% about that property.
We see a lot of people don't even really speak to the person opening the door, go straight into the kitchen and start looking for things that are wrong with the property.
They'll wait for the agent to go, and so this is a kitchen and this is a lounge. No shit, Sherlock.
I'm quite happy to see ancient kitchens and avocado bath and suites, things that smell bad, ceilings hanging down, that's all good. I'm looking for that. If it's not habitable, it's good.
You and I ran a training day with a bunch of investors and we asked him, how many properties do you sell a year that don't go to market? And he said,
Building wealth through property isn't about chasing big deals and paydays. It's about owning assets that make money for you consistently. But figuring it all out on your own, that's where most people get stuck. That's why we created this Property Life membership. It's everything we wish we had when we started. Expert guidance, real-world case studies, and a private community of investors actually doing deals, not just talking about them. So you could spend years trying to piece it all together yourself, or you could plug into a system that's already working for our community. Check out our membership page at This Property Life. Everything you need to know is right there. Success is a team sport. Come join in.
hello and welcome to This Property Life. So one of our episodes in the last few weeks has been how we would approach a new investment area. So today me and Nick are back following on from that particular podcast, and we're going to talk about getting into the nitty gritty of property viewings. So what do we actually look for when we walk into a potential deal? What are the red flags, the hidden gems, the questions we always ask? And how do you stop a viewing from becoming just another walk around with no direction? So whether you're brand new to property, whether you've done dozens of viewings, we hope this episode is going to bring you some practical tips to help sharpen your eye and get the best out of your time on a property viewing. I'm Sarah Blaney. I'm joined by Nick Claydon, my co-host, and this is This Property Life.
Quick heads up before we start the show. If you're serious about buy-to-let investing in 2025, you're going to need to know where to invest. Luckily for you, we've helped countless investors find their goldmine area. And we've put together our free 2025 Buy-to-Let Hotspots Guide. It's packed full of insider tips, market trends, and of course, the top 10 UK rental gold mines. So head to our link in the description below and start investing smart.
Right, let's get to it. So, property viewings. What are common mistakes do you find people doing on property viewings? I think let's start there, shall we?
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest one is that they think it's about property.
Aha, yes. That old chestnut.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the news. It's not actually about the property. It's a little bit about the property.
Yeah, it's a tiny bit. But honestly, if I was going to put a percentage on it, I would say bold, but I'd say it's 20% about that property.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say 80-20, yeah. Bang on.
And the other 80% is the person in front of you.
Talking to people.
Yeah, TTP, our favourite.
Actually, I think it's more, for everyone to realise what we're teaching here, what we're talking about here is about scaling. So, it's a little bit different if you're literally going and you only want to buy one buy to let for the future, retirement, whatever. Okay, that's kind of maybe a slightly different thing. We're talking about how to scale and create and scale a property business where you're doing more than one. You're looking to do multiple units over the coming years. That's I guess really if we're going to frame it, that's what we're framing it as. And I think I would guess that largely our audience would be that. I think those people looking to start and build a property business.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing is get your mindset right about what you are viewing. So you've been to your area, you've done everything we said last time. I'm sure you have. So you've talked to your agents, you've understood the market, you know what you're going to be looking for. Or do you? Do you know what you're looking for? This is really important. So before you just start going off and doing loads of viewings, what are you viewing? What should we be viewing?
Yeah, and this is where it comes down to the strategy, isn't it, that you've got, which is you're led to your strategy by what your goals are. We always talk about the same things, Nick. I feel like a broken record, but we do say it starts with your goals, it moves to your strategy determines the area that you're going to look in, and then finally comes the property. So we don't let the property wag the dog, or whatever that saying is. You know me, I always get sayings mixed up, but basically start with the goal in mind.
If you're starting to, you want to start off with buy-to-lets, straightforward buy-to-let houses, don't go and look at church conversions. That's basically what we're saying. It's very easy to get distracted. Oh, look at that. Everyone knows about that, derelict property around the corner from your house that you've driven past a million times. That's not it. Right. So firstly, you found your area, understand what you're going to view. If you're doing buy-to-let, that's generally going to involve, if you're in England to Wales, it's going to involve your pretty bog standard terraced or semi-detached houses. If you're in Scotland, it's that, plus also certain types of flat. Look at, and generally speaking, if you're looking to scale, you need to create some value, and that normally means buying something that is distressed. What does that mean? What is distressed? Different things to different people.
Yes. So I think people can look at a property and just because the painting is a bit nasty and the carpet's a bit nasty, they'll kind of go, oh, it needs so much work. And that is literally just not even a problem. When we look at distressed, we're looking at the areas where we can add the most value to the property. And generally, this will always be the big ticket items of a kitchen and a bathroom. So if a kitchen and a bathroom need a lot of work, that's a good thing. We want to be in those areas because when we add value to the property, we want to show that we've done that. And a surveyor, in all honesty, doesn't care whether the walls are a bit grubby and white or whether they're in the latest Farrow and Ball green colour. It doesn't add value. It makes it look nice. It makes it rent quicker, but it doesn't add an enormous amount of monetary value. The things that do is kitchens and bathrooms. And, obviously extensions, things like that. But even then, I'm not looking to do that on any buy-to-lets. I don't want to change the structure particularly.
Yeah, buy-to-let is all about just getting in, getting out, getting it renovated, getting it rented, and being able to recycle your money and move on to the next one. So no, we're not doing extensions. We're not knocking walls down. We're not doing anything like that. We're not trying to turn 3 bedrooms into 4 bedrooms or anything like that. It's keep it the same. You're in, you're out, you move on and get it rented.
Well, having said that, sometimes we will, if we've got one of those typical houses where the front bedroom on the first floor has got 2 big windows and you go up and you're like, well, this is a lovely sized bedroom. And, you kind of go, actually, I could probably put a stud wall down here, have, a window in each bedroom and create something. So, 2 could become a 3 just by the addition of a stud wall. In some of those circumstances, that does definitely add value as long as the demand is there to begin with.
Yeah, the demand's got to be there. And, you might add some rental value by having a 3-bed over a 2. Are you going to add huge amounts of value? Because it is the same footprint. You're just putting a wall down it. So yes, in the right place, it will add some value, but it's not going to be measurable against a genuine 3 or 4-bed property by doing that. So I wouldn't go looking for that.
No. So what we're in our area, we've already got to grips with it because of the last couple of episodes ago podcast that we did around this. And we're now got 8 viewings for the day. We've got up there really early. We're going to go till 4:30, 5 o'clock in the evening, looking at all these houses. And I want them all to pretty much look the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when you're doing that, you have to be very organized about tracking what you're doing. Because if you're viewing 8 terraced houses in one day and you're snapping a load of photos, you better be pretty organized about how you're recording which photos go with which house. Otherwise, you're very quickly going to lose track of what you actually did. So yeah, we want uniformity. We're looking at the same kinds of things because if we're doing buy-to-let, that's what we're doing. So all the houses are going to be in probably a fairly similar state of disrepair. Essentially, my rule really with this kind of model is, if it's not livable, if it's not habitable, it's good. That's what I'm looking for when I go out looking for buy-to-lets. I'm quite happy to see ancient kitchens and avocado bathroom suites from 1972, swirly carpets, things that smell bad, ceilings hanging down. That's all good. I'm looking for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that we need to, you've mentioned it already, it's the tracking. So we do get house blindness in a day of viewing, where you start the day off and you're like, oh yeah, interesting. You get to the end of the day, you literally cannot remember what property looked like what and what was wrong with each property. So you need a system. We do definitely need a system of what it looks like, what work needs doing, and the notes about that. Now, you would already have done a lot of your research. So the only unknown when you're going into a property is really what the refurb is going to be, because we already know our rental demand because we've done our due diligence. And we already know the done up value of, that type of house, that size of house, because again, we've done our due diligence. So really the only unknown is the refurb. And that's the 20% of that viewing that we're talking about, is just to assess that refurb.
And generally speaking, the refurb's all going to be a variations on a theme, because if you're looking at 2 and 3 bed terraced houses, there's only so much that's going to be different between them. And bearing in mind, for the model, that we're talking about, where you're trying to scale to work, you need to be renovating. So everything should need a kitchen and a bathroom as a bare minimum, and painting, fixing, cleaning up, and probably new flooring. So everything you look at is going to need that. And then it's just whether, do you need to rewire? Do you need to, change windows, new boiler, heating system? Some houses will need that and others won't need that. But they're all going to be a variation on a theme of, a standard refurb that you'd pretty much do every single time. So that also in itself is a system. And that's what what we do, and what, we've done in the past, how we help people when we're out and about with them, is to kind of imprint those systems on. So you take a lot of the uncertainty away, because you're going in to see something that is going to need some level of renovation, even if it is just a kitchen and a bathroom and a paint, fix and clean up. If a property doesn't need that, it's probably not going to work for a buy-to-let in our scalable model, because it's like,
unless there's a problem with the title, or there's something around the vendor situation that you can solve a problem on. But in the main, I think you're right.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So we've identified some nice distressed, smelly houses to go view. So we make sure we give ourselves enough time. I remember doing this in a mentorship once out in the field, and the chap I was working with had planned out this day, but he hadn't looked at a map. And so we had a viewing on this side of town, and then we had half an hour later, we had a viewing on this side of town, and that was a 20-minute drive. And then we were back over this side of town for the next one. So I just hadn't factored in geography. So that's when my geography G can be very handy, Sarah. Yeah, finally, we're able to rework, the viewings and make it, work. So little things like that can really help you when you're out on a day's viewing, is just to be organized around getting around, leaving yourself enough time in each property, so you're not racing at the last minute and potential of missing things and then racing to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of ways you can track all this information. We've got an app that we use and that we've developed in-house with this property life, called Track My Property, which our members get discounts on. You can use that. You can use a Excel spreadsheet. Just use anything. Use something, but have the postcode, the house, the agent. Get it in a good, hopefully in a good order. And just make sure that you're there a little bit early of that viewing, because looking around, now this is where we're going to start talking about the little differences that make the difference. So the first thing I do when I get out is I'll walk up and down the street. So I'm assuming that I've got a few minutes before the agent gets there. I'm going to walk up and down the street and get a feel for the place. So what type of cars are in the street at what time of day? Is it clean? Is there fly tipping everywhere? Is there people hanging around on the street, or does it have that nice feel? Do people look after their properties or not? You can get a gut feel for that street within probably a nanosecond, I would say.
It's really important to, you do get a gut feeling, but the thing you've got to have in the back of your mind, I've heard people say, don't buy anything that you wouldn't live in yourself or let your mum live in. Now, that's not something I particularly agree with, because this is a business, it's not personal. You've got to take all emotion away. Would your tenant profile live there? Is it suitable for the type of tenants you want to have in your houses? And that's a different question, and it's a harder one to ask, which requires you to have some knowledge of the tenant profiles, in the area and what you want. So, but, you do have to make sure that you're not looking to buy property in a war zone. And I say this a lot, is that buy to let is about finding great value property. It's not about finding the cheapest possible property in a town. The cheapest possible property in town is likely to be on the worst street. And there are some streets that I would simply not buy on in a town. Not many. And it normally does come down to a couple of streets and normally it comes down to a couple of houses or even a couple of families on one street that cause a problem. But it just gives you a nightmare. And, when you're trying to rent those houses out. So you need to know that kind of level of detail. So that's always a good sign, is to have a look on the street, just a general vibe. What's going on? Are there, as you said, a good one is, are there like randoms hanging about? And, cars up on bricks and things like that. That's obviously a red flag, and you want to probably dig a bit deeper into that.
And I'd also be looking to catch the eye of anyone that's looking out the window at me, or that's just about to come out their door and head to the car. And I would strike up a conversation with them, as long as they didn't look like they were in a huge hurry and I was going to annoy them. I'd kind of say, do you live here? I mean, it's quite obvious. I've just come out of their house. I'm just viewing this place. What's it like round here? And just start chatting, open questions.
So we've done that. And then what I do is I go across the street and I stand and I just look at the front of the house. Have a good look at the front of a house and just let it kind of sink in, and with a view of, is there anything I can see immediately obvious that's a bit wrong with this house? So I look at things like the roof line. I look at the chimneys. I look at, is there missing slates on the roof, or, obviously water ingress coming in? Is there trees growing out the guttering? Does it look a bit wonky? Is there something not quite right about it that I need to go and investigate? Any obvious signs of structural movement or cracks down the side of the property or the front of the property? So those are all things that I have a good look at before I even go in.
And then hopefully the agent has arrived and they're looking at you, chatting to the nosy neighbour, eyeing up the roof line, and they're like, come on, get a move on.
Right, so we go in, and then as we discussed right at the beginning of this, we see a lot of people go straight in, bypass, don't even really speak to the person opening the door, go straight into the kitchen and start looking for things that are wrong with the property.
Yeah.
And making
or they'll wait
notes
for the agent to go, and so this is a kitchen.
Yeah.
And this is a lounge. You're like, wow,
yeah.
no shit, Sherlock.
Great insight. So yeah, we've got to take control here. And bearing in mind, you have already done a lot of basic research and that the property needs work. We can do that bit after. The most important thing when you meet someone opening a door is find out who is that person and what is their role.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to make assumptions about that.
Yes, absolutely. You're so right on that. And I think we've experienced this many times out on buying trips with clients, where it's a Monday afternoon and you're in their investment area. Someone opens the door and goes, yeah, have a look round. And then they sort of stand back and they might be on their phone, and you're like, oh, they don't know anything. They're just a key opener. And actually, because it's a Monday and there's no one else in the office, it's the valuer. It's the guy at the back. It's the girl at the back of the office, the most important person in the agency. And you just dismiss them because they're actually busy and they're not in the mood to chat. So it is really important to find out who's opened the door for you. And actually, do you know what? The amount of key openers who just do this as a Saturday job that I've got invaluable information from is unreal.
If it is someone who is employed by an agent to go and open doors, great. Okay, they're not going to give you any insight into probably valuations in the area, things like that. But what they absolutely do know is the area very well. And they open a lot of doors and they see a lot of properties. And so key questions to ask them is about what they've seen recently. Have they seen any nice distressed properties? And who's selling them? Because these often the door openers work for multiple agents. So they might have seen something that you might have missed or is not on Rightmove or Zoopla. So great information to have a chat with the door openers. But sometimes, as Sarah said, you might get lucky and meet one of the senior valuers in the agency who just happens to be out doing a viewing because it's lunchtime, the staff off sick or whatever. And they have an absolute wealth of information that you can transfer from their brain into your brain if you ask the right questions.
Yeah. And, we, Nick, you and I ran a training day just a few days ago with a bunch of investors. One of them was an estate agent, and we asked him the question, how many properties do you sell a year that don't go to market? And he gave us a number, and we were like, okay, let's get some context around that number, because it was quite high. What is that as a percentage of the properties that you would sell in a year? And he said 25%, didn't he? So 25% of his properties in his agency don't go to market. So imagine if you've got that person in front of you at a viewing and you're just task orientated on whether the wiring needs to get redone or not, and you've missed that 25% of their properties go to their little black book.
Yeah. Agents may deny that they have them, but they all have them. They all have a little list of investors that they will call when the really juicy investment grade property comes up. And that is the market that you want to be in. And the only way you're going to get into that little list is if you make friends with the agents and chat to them. So that is our number one rule on a viewing, is go and talk to the person opening the door. Spend more time with that person, asking good questions, finding out about the market, about the area, what's selling, and then you can talk about this specific property. And what are some of the questions that we want to ask about the actual property they're selling?
So the first question that I generally ask is, what's the story with this one?
A lovely, lovely open question. If anyone's not sure what an open or closed question is, a closed question is one that just requires generally a yes or a no answer. So in that context, what would be a closed question? I guess it would be, do you sell many properties like this? Yes. So a nice open question, exactly that. Tell me about this property. My one is, tell me about this property. Tell me about the vendor's situation. Because what are we trying to get from that? Our job as an investor is to try and find, is there a deal to be done here? Right. And the only way you're going to know if there's a deal to be done is if you know what the story is. Is there a story? What is it? And you'll find out by asking those good questions.
Yeah. So our role is to solve problems. So we need to identify what the problem is to know, can we provide a solution? So it could be a problem with the property. It could be a problem with the vendor situation. So either of those is, tell me about this one. What's the story with this one? So then they will, to start talking, generally. And your role is then to guide them along until you're getting the information that you need. You've got to build rapport, and don't make it weird. Don't be like a grilling of them. Try and build rapport quickly, but you've got to get the information from them.
Yeah, and some of the things, some of the bits of information you could get are around, why is the vendor selling this particular property, and what are the potentials? It could be that it's a landlord looking to sell up a portfolio, and then that leads you on to a follow-up question, which you're all going to remember, which is, oh, landlord,
are they selling anything else?
Exactly. Great example of this. I was out on a buying trip with one of our customers. Yeah, it was a landlord property. I asked a question. Well, they missed the question. I went and asked it. Found out. Yeah, they'd made the assumption the person opening the door was a door opener. It wasn't. It was a landlord himself. The agent selling. He said, "No, I'm actually the owner." I said, "Okay, cool. How many more properties have you got?" He went, 70. I said, "Are you selling them all?" He said, "Yeah, but I'm just trying this agent out with one before I sell the rest."
Yeah.
So one on market, 69 properties not on the market, but available to buy, just by asking that question. So yeah, it's really, really important that you spend that time. There's lots of other stories you could get. The sons or daughters are selling the property on behalf of the owner, who may or may not, be alive. Opportunities. Follow-up questions there. Well, how many siblings are involved? Is it just one person? Is it 5? Who's the decision maker? What, where do they live? You might think that's kind of a weird question to ask, but what I'm thinking is, well, look, if an elderly person's got, has died, and there's 3 siblings that all live, one lives in Dubai, one lives down in London, and we're in Glasgow, and one's local, dealing with everything. That's the person that I want to probably try and connect with and try and find out what is their motivation, because it's not always the highest price. That's an easy assumption for, I think, particularly new investors to make, is it's all about price, and it isn't always about price.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's when you're asking about the property, what's the story with this one? It will lead to other questions. The other questions that I really like is, who else has been really interested in this property? What type of people? So they'll tell you whether it's investors, it's first time buyers, second homers. What are the investors thinking of doing? You must have heard a few people talk about what they want to do with this property. The other thing I like to ask is, what would you do with this property?
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, because they know the area, they know the demand, regardless of whether the valuer, a key turner, or whoever they are. They know their area really, really well, and you might not. So you need to get some of their information from them.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of questions to ask, and key one I always make sure I ask every time is, are there any outstanding offers sitting on this property right now? Because that could be a yes/no answer. Okay, but if depending on what it is, if it's a yes, then you can push further. Okay, so tell me what kind of ballpark the offers are in, and what. And
Can't say that, Nick. I can't tell you that.
Can't tell you that. Okay, but you could tell me whether it starts with a 6 or a 7. Does it start with a 6? and you just kind of keep pushing and just having a little, have a bit of fun with it. I think it's really important to remember is, these people are human beings, and they're doing their job, and they like to have a bit of fun like everybody else does. So have a bit of fun.
Yeah, that is exactly it. Yeah, I think it is going with a smile. I've been to so many viewings that have been like maybe open days, especially with auctions where they have a 45-minute window, and it's like everyone piles in, ignores the guy that's sitting out in the yard. They pile in, they run around the house, they make their notes, they take some photos, and then they pile out again. And I'll be there, not even look around the house, chatting to the auction viewer, the guy that's opening the doors. And he is, or she is, an amazing wealth of opportunity of information and all that sort of stuff. But I'll also do my very best to talk to all the other people going round as well, because they're not my competition. They're just, other investors that are in the area. And I'll be like, oh, have you seen much else today? And, you start a dialogue, and you never know who you're going to meet on a property viewing. It could be your next JV partner. It could be a builder. It could be all sorts of people that could be useful to you, and you could be useful to them.
Absolutely. Talk to everyone. So we've chatted to, let's say we've got 20 minutes in that house. If you're on time, you should have 20 minutes in that house. I would say 15 of those minutes should be chat. Yeah. And 5 minutes is going around the property and seeing what's wrong, because you already know. You don't have to inspect the kitchen in minute detail. You look at it and go, am I replacing it or not? Can I get away with new doors and fixtures and sink and top? Or is everything out and redo? That's a really quick decision. You don't need to be going and opening every cupboard to make that decision. Look at the boiler. Do I need to replace the boiler? Is it ancient, or when's it last service? Is it good? Fine, good. Don't need to do it. So that you can get around that house in 5 minutes and make a note of everything you need to do, because you've already done most of that.
You can do this whilst you're talking to the person showing you around. So, it's not that you're just stuck at the front door. Walk around with them, because, you're going to be multitasking. We can all do this, even the men, talk and write things down. And ask them.
No, sir.
Oh, well, I know it's a big ask. But ask the person that's showing you around, what sort of things have people identified that's wrong with this property? Get them to do the job for you.
Yeah. Great. And if you're asking about other offers being on it, you might find out that, the property was under offer and then didn't go through, and it's back on the market having been sold. If that happens, that should be a nice big alarm bell ringing in your head to go, this is an opportunity to close a deal. Because the last thing an agent wants to deal with is a property they've already sold. And if you can solve that problem quickly, they will like you very much.
Yeah, definitely. So we've spoken about how you need to build rapport with the person showing you around. You need to ask open questions about that particular property. Also, though, there's not just that property and that person in front of you. That person has gone to a load of other properties, and we've already sort of intimated they're going to have a lot of knowledge about what else you can go and see. So another favourite question is, what else should I be going to see? If you were investing here, where would you be investing? And which houses would you go and, snap up right now that are on the books?
Again, I had this, many times. The one that sticks out is out on a buying trip. Again, somewhere suburbs of Glasgow. Did exactly that. Viewed a house, it's decent, but lots of people have been around it. Build up good rapport with the agent. And towards the end, we said, right, okay, great. Love this one. Probably be offering on this one, but we're here for more. We want to do 10 houses over the next couple of years. What else you got? Got anything else? And she went, well, actually, I've literally just picked the keys up to another one that's worse condition than this, just around the corner. Do you want to go see it? We're like, yep. Wasn't on the market yet, pre-market. And we got that under offer about an hour later. Didn't even get to the market. Offered on the other one as well. Didn't get that one, but did get the one that was off market or pre-market.
And, the other valuable thing that you can do in a viewing, and I've done this many times with clients on buy-in trips, is to do the offer, non-offer. So as we said at the beginning, the only thing that is unknown as you go into that property is what the refurb could be. So we know what our rental price could be. We know what the done-up value could be. And the only unknown is the refurb. So we can already be doing the maths in our head as to what we could be offering on this property. And yes, that's going to take a little bit of experience and doing this quite a number of times to get that really, down pat if you're not a mathematical person, but it will come. So trust that. But you will know that you can probably offer whatever it is, like let's say 63,000 for that property. And you can test them out. So you've already done the questions that Nick's already sort of said about, has this property had any offers on? What sort of ballpark have they been in? And then you can kind of do the whole, well, it needs a bit of work here. And you can say, well, it needs a new kitchen. There's obviously the rewire, the boiler needs to be done. So yeah, it's going to take a bit of work. There's some damp over in that corner. So, I do like the property, and obviously I've got to go away and do my numbers. But if I was to offer, probably be, I don't know, start with a 6. And you can look them in the eye. If they are the valuer or if they are the negotiator, look them in the eye and see how they react. Because you're not offering, but you're doing a kind of an offer. And you can see whether, if they fall about laughing or if they roll their eyes in disgust, kind of where you are.
Yeah, it's a really good tactic to use, and it just sets your stall out early. But you've got to have built a bit of credibility before you can start doing that. And credibility is all about being serious about what you're doing, turning up. If you book a viewing, go on the viewing. Don't just pull out necessarily because you've got your timings all wrong. And just keep showing up. The more you keep showing up, the more credibility you'll build. The more offers you put in, the more credibility you build. And that's how you begin to get agents essentially on your side and not necessarily the vendor side, which is where they all start. Because at the end of the day, agents like to sell houses. That's what they're there to do. They want to sell houses and make their commission. And if they
that is their job, and you facilitate that.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone wins.
So I think, we've covered it very quickly. It's 20% the property and 80% information gathering about the area, the property, other properties in that area. And I think you can gain from the person standing in front of you to the nosy neighbour outside to the guy in the corner shop, wherever. Just use everyone at your disposal to try and get as much information as you can. But don't just then lose that information. Put it down somewhere, put it into your system, into your spreadsheet, into your app, whatever it is, because that's invaluable information about that particular area that you will use time and time again when you go and do viewings.
Information is power.
Absolutely. So
Great.
Short and sharp.
Short and
but
sharp.
There you go.
Go out there. The most important thing you can be doing, we tell everyone this. If you're looking to buy houses, go and view some houses. That is the most important action that you can be taking. Yeah. So go and enjoy. And we will see you soon on the next one.